Okay, hello and welcome. This is Advocate Mehboob, and we are going to see Indian Penal Code, and we will see what are the important sections for this particular uh, act. I'm trying to share the screen. Let us go with the. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. We are looking at Indian Penal Code today. So let me come one by one. The first thing is about Indian and Penal and Code. When you say Indian, it means it applies to the Indian, what do you say, country. And number two, when you're saying penal, it means it is about penalties for offenses. So basically, it is certain type of collected work, collected text in which the offenses are written in that and the type of penalties, the kind of punishments will be given in this text. So code means something which is codified, codified which is made kind of perfect. Okay, so this is Indian Penal Code for you. Now, when was this brought? This was brought in 1859 actually. So it was worked upon by a lot of people, and it was headed by one person called as Lord Macaulay. Lord Macaulay. So Lord Macaulay was a amazing what do you say, person who has researched the law well. And why am I saying this? He's amazing. Is the kind of work they have done, and they have said that there are certain claims that Lord Macaulay made. He was talking about certainty. Okay? He was talking about certainty, and they tried to bring as many offenses as possible in that, and wordings and other things were made as perfect as possible. The thing is that this came into effect. This was called as some act of 1860. I'm unable to recall now. I think it's Act 45 of 1860. Usually they have these labels like this. Now the story is that uh, from the time it is being implemented in India till today, it's almost, you can say, it's been 160 years. Okay, since the time this Indian Penal Code has come into effect, it's been 160 years. The main major structure of the law has not changed at all. Okay, the major structure of the law has not changed at all. So this is the fantastic work of the original authors. We have to appreciate that. What do I mean by this is there is certain vision about the society, that what kind of things are coming up. Yes, certain additions have come into the Indian Penal Code. For example, like 498, a section about cruelty to women from her in-laws, that has been inserted. That is one amendment, you can say. And there are certain things about the Information Technology Act, if you remember, right? IT Act, and that cyber laws, informations are accordingly inserted in that. Yes, certain insertions and additions are there, but on a large scale, the structure is still remaining. So we should appreciate the vision of the person who has made this law. Certain laws are also contested, and certain laws have been removed, certain sections have been removed in the recent years. If we get a chance, we will try to look at that also. So this is the beauty of this particular code. Now the next point to be understood is that there are two things to be understood. One is general law and other is a specific law. What is a general law and what is a specific law? General law means such a law which is applicable throughout the country. And what is a specific law? That is particularly, okay, I'm really sorry. I would say I would make it, there are two categories. I'll just come to that. The first category is general versus local laws. When you're saying general versus local law, general means it is applicable throughout of India. Local law means it is applicable only to a particular state, a particular region. Okay, so what is the difference? Here, Indian Penal Code is such a law which is a general law for all the crimes generally throughout of India. I'm talking about the region. Now, what is a local law? Local law is, for example, there is a Gambling Act, Andhra Pradesh Gambling Act, Telangana Gambling Act, or Andhra Pradesh Excise Act. That is about the liquor, alcohol, right? So you have now Telangana Excise Act. So this is very specific to the state of Telangana. Okay. Sometimes we have discussed earlier in previous class about Detention Act. Okay, in Maharashtra it's called as MPDA. Please search on that MPDA, Maharashtra Preventive Detention Act. So that act is about preventive detention. That particular act cannot be brought to Telangana or Delhi. It has been brought for that particular state. So what are the general provisions of detention acts is that if some person is having a lot of cases on him, like a rowdy sheet or more than that, and he is a public nuisance or he's a threat to the peace for of the society, he is taken and is detained at some place. Okay, so that is the core gist of MPDA, but that is a separate act. Now we have understood what is the difference between a general law and a local law, or you can say a national law or a local law. There is second category of difference here. Difference. Uh, it can be in a similar way. Let me put it to you. Those laws which are put in the Indian Penal Code, a majority of them have been put in that. So that's why we call it as a general criminal law of India. Indian Penal Code is called as General Penal or Criminal Law of India, right? Then there are some special laws. There are some special laws. So what are the special laws? Let me tell you, there is a popular law called as UAPA. UAPA. What is that? That is presently going on. That is Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Okay, a lot of people in the CA NRC protests have been arrested on that particular charges of that act. So, what was the previous name of a different, act which had most of the essence of this UAPA? So basically, it was TADA. If you remember, TADA was, terrorist activities and what is that? Detention Act, something like that. So next was POTA, Prevention of Terrorism Act, POTA. So these are the flavors of Detention Act which have been brought in the recent decades. So they are specifically made for some special heinous, grave, crimes which are, imminent threat to the society. In such kind of acts, under such kind of acts, any person who is arrested on an offense, alleged offense, for about 3 years, they cannot get any bail at all. There is no bail at all for such person. So, but in the general Indian Penal Code, that is quite possible in some grave instances also, if it is properly contested, and there is some chance that the judge feels that a particular person is not accused of even a grave crime. At that junction, also bail can be granted. But on the other way, on the other side, in heinous crimes, like some terrorism related crimes, that kind of special laws are made where getting bail is very difficult. Anyways, there is one more act called as Prevention of Corruption Act. I believe Prevention of Corruption Act is a separate act which is specifically for the subject of corruption, for the subject of corruption. So so there can be a general law and there can be a special law. That is one category. There can be one general this thing, uh, what do you call, what is it, a general law and a special law, and a general law and a local law. Now what about Excise Act? Okay, Excise Act can be said to be, it can be special or it can also be said to be local. So but the locality of that will come to the state, only to the state itself, only restricted to the state itself. So, anyways, we have seen general laws, we have seen local laws, we have seen special laws. Now we look at the Indian Penal Code. That is the primary, criminal law of India. We'll continue. We'll look at the section. Okay, I'll try to see whichever are important according to me. I will speak on that and let us move forward in this way. The next thing is that let me go to the sections directly. There are many chapters in this. Let me see how many chapters we have. We have okay, we have 23 chapters, guys. We have 23 chapters in the new number wise, and so we have 511 sections in Indian Penal Code, section 1 to section 511. Yes, there are certain additions, there are certain omissions. Omissions are removal of certain sections, but for the sake of understanding, in terms of the numbers from 1 to 511, we have the numbers, and about the chapters, we have 23 chapters. So this is one information. Let us go. Okay, the first section is talking about title and extension of operation. Basically, this particular act which we are seeing right now, the website is legislative.gov.in. So this is a government website where the main uh, acts or statutes are kept. This was updated, I believe, in April 2019. So around this we have this around August 2019, we had this amendment of Article 370 and inclusion of Kashmir from into India from a special state to a union territory. So basically, when it was a special state, I mean Jammu Kashmir was a special state. At that time, Indian Penal Code was not applicable there. That's what the Act in the Section 1 says. Okay, but if Article 370 and its amendment which has happened in the recent times, if it is upheld by the Supreme Court of India, then it will also be applicable to state of Jammu and Kashmir. And right now, the dispute is going on. The case, the challenge is going on in the Supreme Court of India. Next is punishment of offences committed within India. So anything which is committed as an offence in India will be will be leading to a liability of punishment within India by this act. So basically, for the lot of offences, for a major amount of offences which are committed in India, this act will apply. Next, if you go with third one, punishment of offences committed beyond but which law may be tried within India. So basically, let me give you an example. Let's say someone from India has done certain crime outside of India, okay, but which is supposed to be punished in India. That can also be liable to be tried. Okay, that persons are also liable to be tried for that offense committed beyond India. Next, extension of code to extraterritorial offences. What are territorial offences? Those offences done within the territory of India. Okay, so extension of code of extraterritorial offences is that, let's say there is one citizen, okay, and he has gone to Dubai and he has done some crime there. So basically, the act in the section says that if a person has done some wrong, some Indian has done some wrong outside of India, he will be punishable for the same crime in India. Number two, if there is a ship, there is an aircraft, let's say there is a plane or a ship which is registered in India, it's going outside, but some offense has happened on that, then that is also triable. Triable means to be to be prosecuted by a criminal court of law. Okay, it is triable by courts in India. Next, a particular computer is there in India and someone is trying to do some offense against that computer, then that can also be considered to be an extraterritorial offense. Next, uh, one example has been given here. Let us look at the example which says that a person commits a murder in Uganda. Okay, a citizen of India commits a murder in Uganda, he can be tried and convicted of murder in any place in India which he may be found. So basically, this is an example. Okay, let us move. Acha. Section 5 is very important. Basically, it is saying about the military officers, soldiers, army men, airmen, navy men, all those people. Generally speaking, for their offences like mutiny, mutiny is going against the military. The next one is desertion. Desertion is without following the proper procedure, they are leaving the army, navy, or whatever military or armed forces department is there. They are leaving that particular department. so then that is considered as desertion. So if these kind of things are done, then Indian Penal Code will not apply there. I believe they have some special act for that. Let's go to the next one. Definition in the code to be understood subject to exceptions. Okay, the thing is that law is a very comprehensive subject. Means that you cannot find a particular ruling on a particular subject by looking at only one source. Okay, so for example, if I open a case law, if I open an important case, and I am getting some conclusion, it will not make the complete ruling of or law on that particular subject for the country. There might be some other case laws, there might be some other laws. When you are reading it comprehensively together, you will get a good picture of the law in the country. Okay, so now for this definition, let me come to definition. The definition is basically saying at certain places the law is defined, but at some places the exceptions are defined, right? They might be together, but the point is that you have to understand the code along with the exceptions. What are the exceptions? Exceptions can be many exceptions. For example, someone is doing a crime but he's extremely intoxicated, he's out of his senses. Okay, he has taken alcohol or some drugs or something. So what can there be an exception for that crime? Yes, that can be. And some government officer or some police officer with having certain belief that he's rightfully chasing some criminal, is doing some action, but will that action be taken in a general sense? I believe that there can be exceptions to that. So okay, exact example has been given here. Example B is given here. It says that a police officer is catching a person or apprehending a person. What do you say? Uh, Who has committed some a murder, but there is no warrant. So A is not guilty of offence of wrongful confinement, for he was bound by law to apprehend Z, and therefore the case falls within general exception, which provides that nothing is an offence which is done by a person who is bound by law to do it. Okay, very simple thing. Number one is that there is a concept called wrongful confinement. Hopefully, we'll see that in the coming session. Wrongful confinement means putting someone in a particular place and not allowing them to go outside of that. Wrongful confinement might be a person can be kept in a room and they may not be allowed to go out. So, but what if a police officer does on a particular accused criminal, right? Alleged criminal, I would say, someone who is accused of doing an offense. The answer is that the police officer has that warrant, or I'm sorry, the warrant is used in a legal jargon here. I would say he has that legal ability to do that. Okay, but he will not be put in. He will not be prosecuted for wrongful confinement. Okay, so the definition is nothing is an offense which is done by a person who is bound by law to do it. Okay, for example, if particular, let me give you an example. Let's say there is a case happening on a particular property, and there are certain parties who are contesting that, and let's say one party has won that case and the other party has lost it. The party which has won it will get that orders from the court to take over that property, and let's say some court officers are appointed to go to that spot and the take away the property from the person who is sitting on it or who is possessing it. You know what? Can the person who is being deprived now legally of the property, can he or she go and what do you say that their land is being trespassed, or their property is being taken away? The answer is no, because that is an official process. By official process they're taking it away, then that is acceptable. Let's go to the next one. Okay, one important point is some persons might have issue with the gender inequality question, but most of the law uses he, him, his, but to refer to a person. So the point is, it is actually a male or a female. It depends on the section to section. Let it is a very general way of writing. So it will not depict that every criminal is he, or it does not mean that women do not do any crime. But the thing is, it is gender neutral word, we can say, a pronoun he is being used. Let us go to the next. Document electronic record. Okay, one insertion which has been brought by Information Technology Act, guys, in 2000. This is 29A. It is talking about electronic record. The words electronic record shall have the meaning assigned to them in clause T of subsection L of section 2 of the Information Technology Act 2000, Act 21 of 2000. I told you law is a comprehensive subject. So those sections which are present in a separate act, that is the Information Technology Act, or in short IT Act 2000, those sections are to be read when you are reading 29A in Indian Penal Code. Let us go. Okay. Uh, this section 34 is very important, guys. It is talking about common intention. There are questions going to come of common intention and common object. Let us see. Section 34 says acts done by several persons in furtherance of common intention. When a criminal act is done by several persons in furtherance of the common intention of all, each of such person is liable for that act in the same manner as if it were done by him alone. Right? So let's say there are multiple persons who are having same intention of doing a thing. So each person is liable for that act in the same way. Let us see what one is being said. Okay. Section 34 is talking about common intention, guys, which is very important. Let us see. Uh, Okay. See, in the this is the chapter 4 now. I have skipped a lot of chapters uh, because I believe they are not, mostly asked on the bar exam. But let me tell you, you can just go through the Bayer Act easily. You will get those sections easily in the Bayer Act, which is available on internet. I'll try to share this Bayer Act in the group also, hopefully today. So the point to be said is that there are certain things which are defining that something is a wrong, something is an offense. But there are certain things which are also talking about the general exceptions. I told you about general exceptions sometime back, that if some wrong is being done and it there is no straightforward rule, we have to also see the exceptions. So here chapter 4 is talking about general exceptions. So you have to include exceptions also when you are applying a law to a particular fact. Let us see. Section 76 says, act done by a person bound or by mistake of fact, believing himself bound by law. Nothing is an offense which is done by a person who is or by who by reason of a mistake of fact and not by reason of mistake of law in good faith believes himself to be bound by law to do it. See, here his very good example is given. A soldier fires on a mob by the order of his superior officer in conformity with the commands of the law. A has committed no offense. Okay. Next, B is given example. A, an officer of court of justice, being ordered by court to arrest Y, and after due inquiry believing Z to be Y, arrests Z. A has committed no offense. In the first example, let's say there is some kind of fight happening. Some superior officer is asking to fire on a group of people because this is the order given by a superior. The junior officer is as a is a soldier. He has to follow it. So A has committed no offense. He is just following the commands of the law. In the second example, I told you one example of that removal of a person from the possession of a particular property. Here, one example is a particular officer of court is arresting Y, okay, or arresting Z instead of Y. Originally, Y was to be caught, Z is being caught instead of Y, but later on, when it is found, this arrest is not considered to be an offense. When it is genuinely found that there is a mistake of fact that the person is allowed to do. Next, uh, let us see. Okay, 77 is act of judge when acting judicially. Basically, if a judge is doing some work, and if he does it according to the law, which is, then he is acting in good faith and he is not doing anything wrong. Let me give an example. Let's say a particular what do you say? A particular person has done an big offense, and let's say for the example, he or she is put to death, okay, through death penalty. Can you say that the judge has murdered this alleged accused? So, we what do you say? We may not say that because the judge was just doing his duty as per law. He is not trying to kill the what do you say? The accused in that case. Act done pursuant to judgment or order. Okay. Uh, I told you one example. I believe it can fit here. Act done pursuant to the judgment or order of a court. The court has given some order to be performed, some judgment for from the direction to do some action, right? So if someone is following that, then also they are not doing offense. Okay. Act done by a person justified or by mistake of fact believing himself justified by law. Let's take the example. A sees Z commit what appears A to be murder. A in the exercise to the best of his judgment exerted in good faith of the power which the law gives to all persons of apprehending murderers in the fact seizes Z in order to bring Z before proper authorities. A has committed no offense, though it may turn out that Z was acting in self-defense. Okay, basically, let's say there are two persons, A and B are fighting, and C is coming and trying to stop, assuming that A is trying to murder B. Later on, it is found that actually B is trying to kill A and A was defending himself. So this will also not be considered wrong. Basically, you are trying to save someone as per law. Okay, in terms of law, you are having a mistake of fact that you can stop that thing. Let us go to the next one. Okay. Accident in doing a lawful act. Nothing is an offense which is done by accident or misfortune and without any criminal intention or knowledge in doing of a lawful act in a lawful manner by lawful means and in proper care and caution. Okay. Basically, you are doing a right work, a lawful work, and suddenly some accident happens. Let's take the illustration given here by the act. A is at work with a hatchet. Hatchet is like a big knife. Okay, the head flies off and kills a man who is standing by. Here, if there was no want of proper caution on part of A, his act is excusable and not an offense. What do you mean by head? Head means the blade. Okay, the blade. One, there are two parts usually in like hatchet, I believe. One is the handle and other is the blade. And what happens is when the blade is flying off and it's killing a person, then this is not supposed to be an offense, it seems. This is genuinely an accident, genuinely a misfortune. Okay, genuinely it is happening naturally. There is no intention and there is no knowledge that this will go and struck B. Let's go to the next one. Act likely to cause harm but done without criminal intent and to prevent other harm. uh, Nothing is an offense merely by reason of uh, its being done with the knowledge that it is likely to cause harm. If it be done with any criminal intention to cause harm and in good faith for the purpose of preventing or avoiding other harm to persons or property. Okay. Explanation. It is a question of fact in such a case whether the harm to be prevented or avoided by of such nature and so imminent as to justify excuse the risk of doing the act with the knowledge that it was likely to cause harm. Let me take this example. Okay. Before going to the illustration, in the previous one, in the section 80, I am creating one example, guys. Let's say someone is driving a vehicle, okay, on a road, and the road is saying that you can drive at a speed of 60 kilometer per hour. And you know what, some person is running on the road, and within 1 second is coming before the car and is getting hit by the car. Okay, this person who is driving on the road at 60 kilometer per hour, he does not know at all that someone will come before his car. So will he be held liable? I believe according to section 80 of IPC, that person driving at the speed which is defined and he is going normally by his own will and wish, there is no bad intention, he will not be held liable if someone gets accident. Next one, act likely to cause harm but done without criminal intent. Let us see the illustration for this. If I can give my own example, I'll try to make simple examples. Uh, let us see the shorter example, B first. A, in a great fire, pulls down houses in order to prevent the conflagration from spreading. He does this with the intention in good faith of saving human life or property. Here, if it is found that the harm to be prevented of such a nature and so imminent as to excuse A's act, A is not guilty of the offense. Okay, basically in this example, there is a fire to which is spreading to some houses and it is starting at a certain house. A is pulling down house. Pulling down is I believe is demolishing that house with certain intention to stop the fire being spread to other places. And if that house is pulled down, okay, which is a wrong actually, you cannot destroy someone's property without their permission. So, or break the house or demolish the house or pull down that house, but he has done it here in that sense we can say for a greater good some smaller wrong has been done. For a greater good some smaller wrong has been done, then this exception can also be acceptable before law. Let us look at the bigger example. A, the captain of a steam vessel, suddenly without any fault or negligence, finds himself in such a position that before he can stop his vessel, he must inevitably run down a boat with 20 or 30 passengers on board, unless he changes the course of his vessel, and that by changing his course, he must incur risk of running down a boat C with only 2 passengers on board, which he may possibly clear. Here, if he A alters his course without any intention to run down the boat C and in good faith for purpose of avoiding danger to the passengers in the boat B, is not guilty of an offense, though he may run down the boat C by doing an act which he knew was likely to cause that effect, if it is found as a matter of fact the danger which he intended to avoid was such as to excuse him in incurring the risk of running down sea. Okay, let me make it very simple. There is a big ship going on the, there is a big ship, going on water. Okay, and let's say the ship is having certain problem, and let's say I'm just rephrasing this into a good easily understandable example. There are a lot of people on the ship. Okay, what if he is finding two boats. Okay, there are two boats, uh, and there is boat B and boat C. Let's say a particular captain is running a steam vessel. Steam vessel is like big ship. So in terms of saving a boat with 20-30 passengers, and there is another boat with 2-3 passengers, the option is that the vessel is so much into in such a position that it has to hit some you know ship or small boat. Actually, we are talking about boat B and C. So in C there are 2-3 persons, but in B there are 20-30 persons. So that captain can hit C as a need of emergency or to save B. So minimal damage is better than maximum damage. That's what I understand here. Okay, let me give a simple example. Okay, one example which I am creating as of now. Let's say a particular person is very close to a electricity wire, and it is almost trying to touch a person, or it is or maybe it has struck that person. Okay, and the person might die of that electrocution. Okay, that is current shock. So what do? I take a big stick and I hit the person very hard. I take a big stick, a bamboo stick, and hit the person very hard. Because of hitting him very hard, he falls on the ground, and the connection between the live wire, okay, the current wire, and the person is broken, and now he has suffered a bit of damage. So what is the answer now? The question is, let's say the person gets up and gets angry on me, saying that how can you beat me so hard with this bamboo stick? But when this is brought before the law, if it is looked at from the perspective of law, I believe I am trying to save the life of the person. That is a big goal. And a smaller wrong, what I am doing is I am hitting him very hard to separate him from the wire. I believe this can be one example from my side. Okay, very important. Section 82, act of a child under 7 years of age. Nothing is an offense which is done by a child under 7 years of age. The law says that if some person is less than 7 years, whatever wrong they do, that is considered not as an offense. Because at that age, the children have no sense what is right and wrong in the society. 83, act of a child between the ages 7 and 12. Nothing is an offense which is done by a child above 7 and under 12 who has not attained sufficient maturity of understanding to judge of nature and consequences of his conduct on that occasion. Basically, there is second category where there is a person who is above 7 and less than 12, and they don't even understand what they are doing. In this context also, this is not an offense. Any wrong done by them is not an offense. 84, act of a person of unsound mind. Okay, nothing is an offense which is done by person who at the time of doing it by reason of unsoundness of mind is incapable of knowing the nature of the act, or that is doing what is either wrong or contrary to law. For example, let's say some person is highly intoxicated. He has drunk so much alcohol that he is unable to know what is right, what is wrong. Usually people, they lose their minds after drinking or taking a lot of drugs. So let's say that person is doing certain something wrong in that condition. Maybe they are abusing, they're doing something wrong. So in this situation also, the law says, Indian Penal Code says, under uh, 85, I believe, under 85, i'm I believe I'm mixing it up. 84 is talking about unsound mind. Unsound mind is you're not having a sane mind. You're not having a sane mind. That can be popularly called the people as mental patients, okay, or insane persons. And in that way, this what do you say? These persons, the wrong which has been done cannot be considered to be an offense. The next thing is that uh, the next thing is that 85 is talking about intoxication against the will. I'm sorry, I started talking about intoxication. Nothing is an offense which is done by, I'm reading section 85. Nothing is an offense which is done by person at the time of doing by reason of intoxication is incapable of knowing the nature of that. Just give me a moment, please. Can you hear me, guys? Can you hear me? Mr. Safi Siddiqui, Miss Pinky, Mr. Rahim. Can you hear me? Okay. Someone is writing in chat. Voice is breaking, not clear. Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now? Is it clear? Rahim sir? Is it clear now?
No.
Okay. Is it clear now, guys? Are you able to hear me? Okay. Pinky says she can hear me. Anyone else is having an issue? Okay, Safi is saying no, I'll just continue then. So basically, act of a person, section 85 says act of a person incapable of judgment by reason of intoxication caused against his will. Nothing is an offense which is done by a person who at the time of doing it is by reason of intoxication incapable of knowing the nature of the act, or that he is doing that what is either wrong or contrary to law, provided that the thing which intoxicated him was administered to him without knowledge or against his will. The point is that, let's say, a person has gone to a party and he has just drunk some normal soft drink, and someone has put some drugs or some alcoholic element in that, and that person has lost his senses and he is intoxicated and he is acting weirdly. In that time also, this the wrongs which have been done by that person will not be considered as offenses. Let's go to 86. Offense requiring particular intent or knowledge committed by one who is intoxicated. In cases where an act is done which is not an offense, in cases where an act done is not an offense unless done with particular knowledge and intent, a person who does the act in a state of intoxication shall be liable to be dealt with as if he had done the same knowledge as he have had if he had been intoxicated, unless the thing which intoxicated him was administered to him without his knowledge or against his will. Basically, the act is this particular section is a bit different. It says offense requiring a particular intent or knowledge committed by one who is intoxicated. So even if they are intoxicated, okay, and in certain things where some intention or knowledge is needed to do that act, okay, then they will be they would be considered as if they have done the same thing with the knowledge. One example, if I can create out of this rule, okay, of 86 is, let me make an example. Let's say there is a person A and there is a person B. So A wants to kill B, but there is a certain way, that is going to a particular room, taking a gun and going to B's house and shooting B and killing B. Let's say after A is caught after shooting B and he is accused of the murder, can A say that, oh, I was intoxicated? The thing is, A is knowing where the gun is. A is going and taking the gun, he is picking the gun, he is going to the house of B, he is shooting him and he is killing him. So there's a lot of knowledge needed, and there's a lot of sequence needed. So now with this knowledge, how can we say that just because he is drunk and they will test his alcohol in the body and they will find that alcohol is there, but how can they say that he is not having the knowledge? Next, let us look at 87. Act not intended and not known to be likely to cause death or grievous hurt done by consent. Okay, nothing which is not intended to cause death or grievous hurt and which is not known by the doer to be likely to cause death or grievous hurt is an offense by reason of any harm which may cause to be intended by the doer to cause to any person above 18 years of age who has given consent, whether express or implied, to suffer that harm, or by reason of any harm which may be known by the doer to likely cause any person who has consented to take the risk of that harm. Let us take the illustration. A and Z agree to fence with each other for amusement. This agreement implies the consent of each to suffer any harm which in the course of such fencing may be caused without full play. And if A, while playing fairly, hurts Z, A commits no offense. Okay, I don't know how many people know about fence. Fence is a type of sport. I think they have thin sports with which they do this fencing. Let me give a very easy example. Let's say A and B are two boxers, okay, and they are coming to the ring. You know, boxing is a very harsh sport where each boxer is hitting the other person very hard. Okay, similar example can be martial arts, kickboxing, kung fu, and the latest you have this MMA, mixed martial arts. Okay, so hurting is absolutely going to be there. But what kind of hurt? Not simple hurt. It can be grievous hurt, and sometimes if one of the person is hit very hard, then they may die in the ring itself. They may die in the ring itself. So for this, usually they sign this contract saying that if I get hurt, I would be responsible. Now coming to this section, I would say the intention. If the intention is not to kill a person, then it's just sport where you're playing some fencing or some other thing. Then in that way we can say that that death or that grievous hurt was not intended. So we will not consider it as a murder or things like that. 88 is saying act not intended to cause death done by consent in good faith for person's benefit. Nothing which is not intended to cause death is an offense by reason of any harm which it may cause or be intended by the doer to cause or be known by the doer to likely to cause to any person for whose benefit it is done in good faith and who has given a consent, whether express or implied, to suffer that harm. Let us take the example. A surgeon, knowing that a particular operation is likely to cause the death of Z, who suffers under the painful complaint, but not intending to cause Z's death, and intending in good faith Z's benefit, performs that operation of Z with Z's consent. A has committed no offense. Okay, let me put it to you. We all know that for many ailments, for many diseases, we go to doctors, and doctors treat us. Sometimes there are severe things like cancer, right? Some body part is not working properly. Maybe someone is having choking of the heart, that is called as a blockage of the heart. Usually in these kind of situations, the doctors have to operate to repair what is being wrong in the body. But during that process, if the patient dies, what can the doctor do? If there is no mechanism to to isolate what precisely wrong was done, then we cannot say that doctor has directly done that. Many a times there is a risk of the operation also. Sometimes about the kidney transplant, sometimes some heart transplant or some things like that. So basically it is a example which I am giving, but the original rule says if any action is done in good faith but by consent for a particular person's benefit, then that will not be considered as a offense if it turns out that the action is turning out to be something as an offense. Act done in good faith for benefit of child or insane person by or by consent of guardian. Okay, nothing is done in good faith for benefit of person under 12 years of age or of unsound mind or by consent either express or implied of the guardian or other person having lawful charge of the person is an offense by reason of any harm which it may cause or be intended by the doer to cause or be known by doer to be likely to cause to that person. That this exception shall not extend to intentional causing of death or to attempting to cause death. That is, exception shall not extend to doing anything. Okay, let us take an illustration for this for section 89. A in good faith for his child's benefit without his child's consent has his child cut for the stone by surgeon knowing it to be likely that the operation will cause the child's death, but not intending to cause the child's death. A is within the exception in as much as his object was the cure of the child. See, in a very, very simple sense, let me take, I will shorten it. 89 is saying about a action taken by someone else for the benefit of others. But as a guardian of a child or a unsound person, okay, you can also give the consent. So now a particular, let's say, father or some guardian is giving that consent for the child, and there is a risk that when that surgery or some kind of thing has been happening is being done, the other person, that is the child or that insane person, unsound mind person, might suffer something, right? That risk has to be taken. But if something wrong goes out, then that is not an offense on the part of the guardian. Okay, consent known to be given under fear or misconception. A consent is not a consent as intended by this code if consent is given by person under fear of injury or under a misconception of fact, and if person doing the act knows or has a reason to believe that the consent was given in consequence of such fear or misconception. Or consent of insane person is the consent is given by person who from unsoundness of mind or intoxication is unable to understand nature consequence of that to which he gives his consent. Or consent of child unless the contrary appears from the context if the consent is given by a person who is under 12 years of age. Okay, let me make it very simple for you. Basically, if there are two things, one is the fear and another is misconception. What do you mean by consent? Consent, we have seen earlier, if some person is giving consent for something, permission for something, then you are indulging them in some action. And if that action is leading to some wrongful outcome, then that can be considered an offense or not, depending upon the consent. Okay, so consent is the permission. Now he's saying that if the consent is taken with fear, for example, let's say a person A is showing a knife to B and asking to do something, and B is saying that okay, I will do it now. So will it be free consent? No, it is by fear. Okay, some fear is given. Or let's say A is saying that, like, there are two persons, A and B. A is saying to B that B's child is having has undergone an accident, and A is going to the hospital and is asking B to sit in the car, and later on A is taking B away from that place to some other place, not the hospital. And it turns out that the story was also false about the child's accident. So basically A will say that, oh, I have taken B with the consent in my car. B will say the consent was taken with misconception. You said that there was some falsehood being said, or some misconception by which I sat in the car. Okay, sometimes it is the wrong person. Let's say B is not the actual person who is supposed to be taken to hospital. Some other person is taken. At that time, we can precisely say it is a misconception of fact. Let's go to the next one. Uh, Consent is done. Okay, similarly, consent given by a insane person or a child under 12 is uh, is not considered to be a consent. One is fear, one is misconception, one is insanity, and one is childhood. That is anyone who is less than 12 years. Exclusion of acts which are offences independently of harm caused. The exception in 87, 88, 89 do not extend to acts which are offences independently of any harm which they may cause or be intended to cause or be likely to cause to the person giving the consent or whose behalf the consent is given. Illustration: causing miscarriage unless caused in good faith for the purpose of saving life of women is offense independently of any harm which it may cause or be intended to cause to the woman. Therefore, it is not an offense by reason of such harm, and the consent of woman or of her guardian to the causing of such miscarriage does not justify the act. Okay, uh, basically, now we have seen that some wrong is there. We had seen so far some wrong is there, which is in the legal terms it is called as an offense. One second, please. Okay, the point is that we had seen that first thing, wrong, that is an offense is a wrong, we have seen. Then we have seen that a consent is also involved many times in wrongs. But the third thing we are seeing here is that even if the consent is given and the wrong is so independently wrong that it can be considered an offense. One example is causing miscarriage. Miscarriage is what? Killing of the child of a woman. Killing of a child of a woman in the stomach before the child is born, right? So what happens in this? Let's say the woman is saying, yes, yes, I want to kill the child. So even if that woman is accepting it, okay, as consent, and a particular man or some woman is doing it, this will also be considered, this will be considered as an offense. 92 is saying, uh, uh, act done in good faith for benefit of a person without consent. Okay, nothing is an offense by reason of any harm which may be caused to a person for whose benefit it is done in good faith, even without the person's consent, if the circumstances are such that it is impossible for that person to signify consent, or if that person is incapable of giving consent and has no guardian or other person in lawful charge of him for whom it is possible to obtain consent in time for doing with benefit. There are certain provisos. I'll not go into provisos as of now. Let us look at illustrations. I think, okay, illustration is given. Z is thrown from his horse and is insensible. A surgeon finds that Z requires to be trepanned. A, not intending Z's death but in good faith for Z's benefit, performs the trepan before Z recovers his power of judging for himself. A has committed no offense. Okay, I believe I had given one example earlier about that electricity, wire and the bamboo stick. I think that example can fit here in this section 92, I believe. Basically, someone is doing a action in good faith for the benefit of a person without even the consent. Okay, they are not even taking the permission. For example, he's giving one example where Z falls from a horse, or that is thrown from his horse and is insensible. Basically he is losing his senses, and if surgeon comes to see this and finds this and he is operating on him, I believe trepanned is some surgery, and but it is done without the consent of Z. Next, Z is carried off by a tiger. A fires at the tiger knowing it to be likely that the shot may kill Z, but not intending to kill Z, but in good faith intending Z's benefit. A's ball gives Z a mortal wound. A has committed no offense. Okay, basically Z is a, let's say, is a person. A tiger has caught Z and is taking Z away. Let's say A is there and A is trying to protect Z from the tiger. A is shooting, but during the time of shooting, Z gets the bullet. Okay, Z gets hit by that gunshot, and Z dies. A has committed no offense here. Okay, this was done as for the good of the person in good faith for the benefit of the person, but without consent. Third, a surgeon sees a child suffer an accident which is likely to prove fatal unless an operation be immediately performed. A surgeon sees a child suffer an accident which is likely to prove fatal unless an operation be immediately performed. There is no time to apply to the guardian's child's guardian. A performs the operation in spite of entreaties of the child, intending in good faith the child's benefit. A has committed no offense. Okay. Third example simply says that a particular child is there, a doctor, a surgeon is there. The child is suffering, and because of it, the surgeon, sees that that accident, and believes that immediately the child has to be given proper treatment. So now, what happens? The child is being operated upon even without the permission of the parent. So as we know, for a child the permission of the parent is important, the guardian's permission is important. Here in this context, this is right, it is being said. Next, D, A is in a house which is on fire with Z or Z, a child. People below hold out a blanket. A drops the child from the housetop knowing it to be likely that the fall may kill the child, but not intending to kill the child and intending in good faith the child's benefit. Here, even if the child is killed by the fall, A has committed no offense. Okay. Uh, Basically, there is a building which is on fire. There is a firefighter or someone who is saving those people, and there is a very small child. So, because if the child is not thrown down where people are holding out a blanket, the child may get burnt and the child might die, right? So, uh, trying to do some benefit of a person against the will, against the permission of the guardian, in this context it is being said that this is also right and this is not an offense. uh, okay. Communication made in good faith. Okay, let me give a very small example. A is communicating something to B, but it is made with good faith, but B is suffering because of that. Okay, good example is given here. A surgeon in good faith communicates to a patient his opinion that he cannot live. The patient dies in consequence of the shock. A has committed no offense, though he knew it to be likely that the communication might cause the patient's death. The people who are well aware of psychology know that whenever we are saying some bad news, it is necessary that we should be saying that news in a very nuanced, very unique way, so that the other person might not get a shock. So that is a human tendency to get shock. And the example which is being given here is that A is a doctor who has said a news to the patient that he will not live. Maybe there is some uh, medical condition, okay, some cancer or some things like that. But let's say B is the patient, B is getting a heart attack because of that news and he is dying. So A will not be held liable. Let's go to the next one. Let me see how many do we have. We have about, I think, till 106. Communication made in good faith. Act to which a person is compelled by threats, except murder and offences against the state, punishable with death. Nothing is an offence which is done by a person who is compelled to do it by threats, which at the time of doing it reasonably causes the apprehension that instant death to that person will be a consequence, provided the person doing the act did not of his own accord or from a reasonable apprehension of harm to himself, short of instant death, place himself in the situation by which he became subject to that constraint. Okay, we were talking about some threat earlier, but now more concrete, section is being given. Concrete explanation of section is given. What is being said here? Let us look at the explanation. A person who is of his own accord by reason of threat of being beaten joins a gang of dacoits, knowing their character is not entitled to the benefit of this exception, on the ground of his being compelled by associated to anything do that is an offense by law. Okay, explanation to a person seized by a gang of dacoits and forced by threat of instant death to do a thing which is an offense by law. For example, a smith compelled to take his tools and force the door of a house for the dacoits to enter is entitled to benefit of this section. Okay. Okay, let us look at section 94. A particular person is compelled. Let us take an example. we have we have A, we have B. Okay, let's say A is compelling B by some threats. He's showing a gun on him and saying that, open the lock of a treasury, okay, or open the door of a building. So when B is acting upon that, generally speaking, it is not an offense. Now here there are two things. There is a concept called dacoit. Okay, dacoits are robbers. What do? They make a gang, they go to places and they will loot, they will take away things, okay, by threatening people. The story is that if a particular gang of dacoits is there and they are asking a particular person by threatening him to do one action, then that action is not considered to be a wrong, which is given in explanation 2. But if they are doing something, if a person is joining a gang and he's involving in all the activities of the gang, that this gang is doing this wrong, then it is said that this person is doing an offense. Okay, this person is doing an offense whenever that gang is doing anything wrong, being a part of the gang member of that dacoits, then who is doing a wrong. I would like to ask the participants, are you guys following what I am saying? Mr. Rahim, Miss Pinky, Mr. Siddiqui, Miss Bhuvaneshwari, please speak.
Yes, we are following.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Rahim sir, are you following?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Bhuvaneshwari, are you following? I think Bhuvaneshwari is not having a mic presently. Let me try to speak. Let me go back. So let us look at section 95. Act causing slight harm. Act causing slight harm. Nothing is an offense by reason that it causes or that it is intended to cause or that it is known to be likely to cause any harm if that harm is so slight that no person of ordinary sense and temper would complain of that such harm. Okay. Uh, Let me give a very small example. You know what? Whenever we joke with our friends, we put our hands on their backs, right? Sometimes some friends do it with some force, right? I have seen that, when we are very sensitive and someone is hitting us or touching us hardly, then we get hurt. So that can be a slight harm. That example, in that way, if you go and lodge a complaint saying that my friend or my relative or my classmate has uh, you know while doing this joke or while we were having this conversation he has hit me hard, then we cannot generally put make it a fuss, make it a big offense. It can be slight harm, I believe. Let's go to the next one, of the right of private defense. Okay, what is private defense? Private defense is to save a particular person according to law. According to law, your body, your life, you have a right to protect your life, your body, and even to protect your property. That is a right being given to us. Okay, that is a right being given to us. So in what forms does it manifest? I hope some of that aspects, some perspectives are given in the coming sections. Section 96 says things done in private defense. Nothing is an offense which is done in the exercise of private defense. That is, you're trying to save yourself. Okay, so then if you are trying to do private defense, then that is not an offense. Let us see. Section 97 says, Section 97 says, right of private defense of the body and of property. Every person has a right, subject to the restrictions contained in Section 99, to defend. What to defend? First, his own body and the body of any other person against any offense affecting the human body. Secondly, the property, whether movable or immovable, of himself or of any other person, against any act which is an offense falling under definition of theft, robbery, mischief, or criminal trespass, or which is an attempt to commit theft, robbery, mischief, or criminal trespass. Okay, there is a private defense of the body. That is, you can protect your own body by doing certain action. You can protect the body of any other person, okay, if it is affecting their body or your body. The number two is about the property. So you can protect your property by doing what? By doing a particular action. What are the types of properties? Movable and immovable property. What is movable property? Something which can be moved. For example, phone, television, laptop, or some things like that. What are immovable properties? Like land, okay, land or apartment or a house, or immovable property. So in this type of property, when someone is trying to do what? A theft, a robbery, a mischief, or criminal trespass. Okay, in these type of wrongs, okay, it can be your own property or someone else's property. When you have a right to protect that. If you feel that this is a wrong being done, this is the wrong being done, and you can protect it. So let us go ahead and look at 98. Right of private defense against the act of a person of unsound mind. when an act which would otherwise be a certain offense is not that offense by reason of the youth or the want of maturity of understanding, the unsoundness of mind or intoxication of person doing that, or by reason of any misconception on the part of that person, every person has the same right of private defense against that act which he would have with the act where that offense. Okay, illustrations. Z under the influence of madness attempts to kill A. Z is guilty of no offense, but A has the same right of private defense which he would have if Z were sane. Basically, guys, 98 is an extension of 97. So private defense has to be done even if on the other side, if there is a minor, someone who is less than 18 years, someone who is very young, or number two, someone who is insane. Insane is unsound mind, or you can say mental patient. Okay. Third thing is intoxication. That is someone who is drunk or someone who has lost his senses. That can be done by some narcotic drugs also, not only with alcohol. So if that kind of person is also attacking, then you have the right to do the private defense. Next, B. Let us take illustration B. A enters by night a house which he is legally entitled to enter. Z in good faith taking A for a housebreaker attacks A. Here Z by attacking A under his misconception commits no offense. But A has the same right of private defense against Z which he would have if Z were not acting under that misconception. Simply speaking, let's say there is a building. Okay, there is a building, and I'm just extending the example illustration given here, and stays there in that building, or Z is the watchman. Okay, A is the person who stays in the house, and at night maybe some information gap is there. So A is trying to enter, and Z believes that that is a thief or someone trying to get in. Is a housebreaker. Z attacks A. So this is a misconception. So Z is not committing any offense, but A has the right of private defense against Z. So A, because A is being attacked, A can do the private defense. He has the right. Let us look at. I think there are some more. I think till 106 we have some more things we will see, and we'll try to finish defenses. Defenses are important. Defenses can be quite regularly asked. Let us see. Acts against which there is no right of private defense. There is no right of private defense against an act which does not reasonably cause the apprehension of death or of grievous hurt if done or attempted to be done by a public servant acting in good faith under the color of his office, though that act may not be strictly justifiable by law. There is no right of private defense against an act which does not reasonably cause the apprehension of death or of grievous hurt if done or attempted to be done by the direction of public servant acting in good faith under color of his office, though that direction may not be strictly justifiable by law. There is no right of private defense in cases in which there is time to have recourse to protection of public authority, extent to which the right may be exercised. The right of private defense in no case extends to the inflicting of more harm than it necessary to inflict for purpose of defense. Let us see the explanation, then I will put my thoughts. A person is not deprived of right of private defense against an act done or attempted to be done by a public servant as such unless he knows or has reason to believe that the person doing that act is such public servant. Explanation 2. A person is not deprived of the right of private defense against an act done or attempted to be done by the direction of a public servant unless he knows or he has reason to believe that the person doing the act is acting by such direction, or unless such person states the authority under which he acts, or if he has authority in writing, unless he produces such authority if demanded. Okay, let's go to the definition. Acts without which there is no right of private defense. Okay, I think we have seen certain section earlier. It is kind of going. It's a vice versa. It is the opposite way of seeing this. Okay, it's a vice versa way of seeing this. Here it is being said that acts against which there is no right of private defense. For example, I am creating one example here. Let's say there is a police officer coming to arrest a person, and they are forcibly taking that person to the police station. What happens? there is a kind of pushing and pulling and some kind of assault, I may say. I may use a word assault right now. So in that context, what happens is a person may fight back. He may fight and beat the police officer. So that kind of action may be in a perspective of private defense, but right now that private defense will not apply, because the other person is a public servant, public officer who is doing his duty. That can be one example which I am imagining right now. Okay. Uh, Let us go to section 100. When the right of private defense of the body extends to causing death, the right of private defense of body extends under restriction mentioned in the last preceding section to the voluntary causing of death or of any harm to the assailant if the offense which occasions the exercise of the right be of any of the description hereinafter enumerated, namely. Let us see. First, such an assault as may reasonably cause the apprehension that death will otherwise be the consequence of such assault. Secondly, such an assault as may reasonably cause the apprehension that grievous hurt will otherwise be consequence of such assault. Third, an assault with the intention of committing rape. Fourthly, an assault with the intention of gratifying unnatural lust. Fifth, an assault with the intention of kidnapping or abducting. Sixth, an assault with the intention of wrongfully confining a person under circumstances which may reasonably cause him to apprehend that he will be unable to have recourse to the public authorities for his release. Seventhly, I think seventh is remove an act of throwing. It is inserted, I believe. Act of throwing or administering acid or an attempt to throw or administer acid which may reasonably cause the apprehension that grievous hurt will otherwise be the consequence of such act. Okay, the right of private defense here, it is extending to the voluntary causing of death or of any other harm to the assailant. Who is the assailant? Assailant is someone who is attacking you. Okay, if the offense which occasions the exercise of right to be of any description hereinafter enumerated. Basically, what can I say? See, always there is a theory of proportionality. If you see in many laws, there is a theory of proportionality. What is that? What is that? Basically, let's say, let me tell you one thing. Let us take some general example. Let's say my friend has, asked me, he has, what do you say, given one, party to me. And as a mutual friendship, some other day the person will ask me to give a party. So I will try to give a party for a one-time meal. That can be there. Okay, the person is saying that, oh, if my friend says, I have given you a party, I have, asked you for a dinner, now give me 1 crore rupees as a gift. So you will say this is not proper, right? This is not equal, you can say. On the other way, sometimes some persons are like, I have given you, I have, what do you say, given the, what do you say, let's say there are two students who are studying for a subject. One person may say, I have helped you in one subject, now you help me in 5 subjects, right? So this is the proportionality is not present. Okay, one person is asking for more. Let us come back to the example of this offense or crime. The point is, in the criminal law, it is also said that you have to only do that much defense which is needed. That is there. I hope it will come soon in the coming section. The point here is, if the private defense is needed for this particular 7 type of assaults or offenses, then in that way, it sometimes even leads to causing death. So as far as I read here, I believe this will be not considered as a wrong if it is in doing the private defense of the body. What was those things? First one is that someone is trying to kill you. First is about the death. Number 2 is about what? Grievous hurt. Number 3 is intention of committing rape. Number 4 is gratifying unnatural lust. Okay. And fifth is kidnapping or abduction. And sixth is about what? Wrongful confinement. And that thing is that you don't have a mobile or any other thing to contact the public authorities. And the last thing is someone is trying to put acid on you or throw acid on you. This is I think this insertion was brought, let me see, by 2013. After that Nirbhaya Act and things happened, I believe this was brought. This was brought in other places too, I believe. So these are the kind of offenses where you can yes, you can do a private defense, but sometimes it goes to that extreme extent of hurting the other person, leading to his causing death to the other person. Let's go to the next one. 101, section 101 says, when such right extend to causing any harm other than death, if the offense be not of any of the description enumerated in the last preceding section, the right of private defense of the body does not extend to voluntary causing of death to the assailant, but does extend under restriction mentioned in section 99 to the voluntary causing to assailant of any harm other than death. That's what I said just now. It is about the proportion. The point being said is, in the previous section, that is section 7, 7 types of heinous, very grave, very dangerous crimes are being described, for which sometimes during the private defense the death of the assailant is also happening, okay, and it is not considered as an offense. But when it is other than 7, some other type of thing happens and you're trying to kill them, then that will be considered as a murder, okay, or a culpable homicide. So you cannot try to kill the other person or harm him very badly. So it is about the proportionality. As much is the wrong, you have to put that much force. Let us go further. Section 102 says, commencement and continuance of right of private defense of the body. The right of private defense of the body commences as soon as a reasonable apprehension of danger to the body arises from an attempt or threat to commit the offense, though the offense may not have been committed, and it continues as long as such apprehension of danger to the body continues. Okay, this is a very funny section. I want to give actually a funny example out of this. Okay, 102 is talking about commencement and continuance of right of private defense. Basically, let's say A and B are two persons present, okay, and A is having a threat from B, okay, B is trying to beat or kill A. So what should A do? A will try to do the defense of himself, right? A will try to do the defense of himself. The point is, let's say there has been some fight or some apprehension, and now A has gone back to his house, B has gone to his house. But later on, A goes to the house of B and he is attacking B because he is having an apprehension. Then that can be sometimes said to be not in the period of that fear of apprehension of the attack. Or maybe let's say something happened like 1 month back. Now you're going and you're hitting someone and saying that, oh, I was having the fear that A will come and beat me. So that can also be not accepted. The point is that the main point is that it should be acceptable only till the time that it is the fear is there, the apprehension is there. Let's go to 103. When the right of private defense of property extends to causing death, okay, the right of private defense, we had earlier talked about body and now we are talking about the property. The right of private defense of property extends under the restriction mentioned in section 99 to the voluntary causing of death or any other harm to the wrongdoer, if the offense, the committing of which or the attempt to commit which occasions the exercise of right be an offense of any of the description enumerated, namely, first, robbery, house breaking by night; thirdly, mischief by fire committed on any building, tent or vessel, which building, tent or vessel is used as human dwelling or as place of custody of property; fourthly, theft, mischief or trespass under such circumstances as may reasonably cause apprehension that death of grievous hurt will be the consequence, if such right of private defense is not exercised. Okay, very nice this thing, very nice section. Basically, when you are defending your own property, what are the offenses against the property? Robbery is there, housebreaking is there, mischief by fire is there, theft or trespass, house trespass is there. I believe what happens is, if while defending these properties you are having to hit the other person, the assailant, the person who is trying to do this wrong, in this situation, even if that person dies, then this is not an offense, okay. So what are the things? These are the four things. So relating to property. If the raw offense, the commit of which occurs on it. Okay. The next thing is in even in the you have number one is robbery. Robbery, someone is coming and taking something away from the person. Okay, it can be movable, right? It can be immovable. Persons can be robbed, houses can be robbed. So if something is being taken away from the person or from the house, then that is considered to be robbery. Okay. So house breaking. Okay, getting into the house. Number three is mischief by fire. Basically, the point is if there is an empty building and no one is staying there, no one is staying there, then if you are going and beating them, that is wrong. Okay, or if you're trying to stop them by certain way, that is wrong, or you are hurting them to the extent of causing that, that is also wrong. The point being said in the third is that there should be human dwelling, that is someone should be staying there, and there should be mischief that is going to cause a harm to the building. So that is considered to be wrong. Let's go to the next one. The fourth one is talking about theft, mischief, or house trespass. Basically, in this context also, the private defense of property will extend to causing death. Okay, because the law is allowing to cause death, in that circumstance, it is not our intention to go out of the way and kill people. That is totally wrong. Let's go to section 104. When such right extends to causing any harm other than death. When such right extends to causing any harm other than death. Now, again, same like we had seen about the body. Now we are looking at the property, I believe. If the offense, the committing of which or attempting to commit which occasions the exercise of right of private defense be theft, mischief, or criminal trespass, not of any of the description enumerated in the last preceding section, that right does not extend to the voluntary cause of death, but does extend subject to restrictions mentioned in section 99 to the voluntary causing to the wrongdoer of any harm other than that. Basically, this 104 is just like 101. Okay, it's talking about the main four ways where it is very gruesome, very terrible, where sometimes the other person may the assailant who is trying to do that crime upon our property, on the extent that he may also die in that protection by the way of private defense. 104 is talking about lesser harm. It is not so much harmful that you can kill them. You might hurt them, but you may not kill them. So these are this is being described in section 104. Next, 105. Commencement and continuance of right of private defense of property. The right of private defense of property commences when a reasonable apprehension of danger to the property commences. The right of private defense of property against theft continues if offender has affected his retreat with the property, or either the assistance of public authorities obtained or the property has been recovered. The right of private defense of property against robbery continues as long as offender causes or attempts to cause or any person death or hurt or wrongful restraint, or as long as fear of death, instant death or instant hurt of instant personal restraint continues. The right of private defense of property against criminal trespass or mischief continues as long as the offender continues in the commission of criminal trespass or mischief. The right of private defense against house breaking continue as long as the house trespass has begun. Okay, let me make it very simple. Very simple. 105 says only if the fear, the apprehension is there, or the other person is there, that assailant is there and he is harming you, only at that time you have the right of private defense of property. Let's say, as we have seen earlier I gave you one funny example. You are going and hitting a person after 1 month or 1 day, saying that at that time earlier you were giving me some threat or you were trying to beat me. Right now also, if the thief has left, or the robber has left, or the police has come, the public authorities have been informed, they have been on the way and things like that. So when reasonable apprehension of threat to ourselves regarding the taking away of that property is there, then only then private defense applies. If that fear, that apprehension, that that belief is not there, then that private defense goes away. It's not there. The last section in this chapter 4, right of private defense against deadly assault, when there is risk of harm to innocent person. if in the exercise of right of private defense against an assault which reasonably causes the apprehension of death, the defender be so situated that he cannot effectually exercise that right without a risk of harm to an innocent person. His right of private defense extends to the running of that risk. Okay, A is attacked, illustration is given, A is attacked by a mob who attempt to murder him. He cannot effectually exercise his right of private defense without firing on the mob, and he cannot fire without risk of harming young children who are mingled with the mob. A commits no offense if by so firing he harms any of the children. Basically, the section is saying that when you are trying to do private defense, you are trying to defend yourself from a deadly assault. Deadly assault is, it should mean that you are trying to save your life from the person who are trying to kill you. It is about the deadly assault, means they are trying to take your life. Okay, in this way, if you are trying to save yourself, and during which someone gets hurt, okay, someone gets hurt, then it is not your fault. You are trying to save yourself. Okay, one example is given here. A is attacked by a mob. Mob is a group of persons. A is attacked by a mob who are trying to murder him. So what should A do? A is trying to do his private defense. He is taking out a gun and he is firing on the attacking mob. But when there is mob, generally, when you go out on streets, there are people, roaming around who are not, in communication with you. What do you do at that time? You have, the law is saying that a person A, when he is firing at that mob, and even, he is firing with the risk that this will hit, the bullets will hit people who are coming on the street who are not with the mob. Then if that wrong happens, that is a stranger is getting hurt by that bullet or by the act of private defense, A is committing no offense, it seems. A is committing no offense if by doing so he harms any of the children. The example is, as per the section, innocent person is being referred to harming young children in the illustration. That's the thing. So that's the topic so far. For today, I think it's been pretty long. I want to take your inputs. Have you been understanding what I am saying, Mr. Siddiqui, Miss Pinky, Mr. Rahim? Can you hear me?
No. Hello.
Okay. Yes, Pinky.
In between because power off, but later I understood what.
Okay. Thank you so much, Pinky. Yes, Mr. Rahim. Mr. Rahim, can you speak? Mr. Siddiqui. Mr. Siddiqui, can you hear me? Mr. Rahim, are you following so far?
Yes, sir. For disturbance हो रहा था guys, break हो रहा.
Okay, I'm stopping the class now. I'm done with today's session. I'm stopping it now. Thank you so much for attending, and let's see what we can do in the next class. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.